This episode is powered by denmeditation.com. Though meditation is the primary focus, the bigger goal is for people to understand and love themselves, thus creating more harmony in the community at large. To find out more about Den Meditation's teacher training programs, retreats, and all things Den Meditation, go to denmeditation.com. Welcome to Den Talks Podcast. This is Tal, your host and the founder of Den Meditation. We have Rebecca Kordecki today. She's a breathwork facilitator. She's unbelievable. But this story is powerful. It's interesting because we start just talking about kind of relationships, and she gives really cool advice. She calls it the red flags, the green flags, and the gray flags, which I love. And we really talk about what are those warning signs that we all kind of miss that you might even be having in your relationship currently. What are ways to set your own boundaries? But then in the second half of the episode, we really get into her story. And it is amazing that she's in such a beautiful place with this ability to teach with such kindness and love and strength, because she's had it. I mean, she was in and out of foster care. There's adoption stories, meeting parents stories. I mean, there is ups and downs. At one point, I'm like, this is like a movie, except unfortunately, it's her own emotional well-being that is going up and down. She is incredible. The story is powerful. And also it'll remind you that no matter what, we all have the ability to grow beautiful things. No matter what your life feels like, where you are now, what has happened to you in the past, you have the ability to create beauty. And I think Rebecca, more than anybody, will remind you of that. Also, if you like what you hear, which I know that you will, she is doing a breathwork training. It is November 5th through 19th. It's just 3 Sundays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. virtual. So you can join from anywhere, but this time that I'm giving you is Pacific Standard Time. So 10 a.m. PST to 4 p.m. 3 Sundays in a row, starting November 5th, ending November 19th. Come join again, but it's live, virtual. So you can talk to her, get so much amazing advice, and create a group with the other people that are there. She's amazing. She's an incredible breathwork practitioner. You will get a lot out of it. I promise. Hey, Rebecca, I'm so happy you're here.
Yay,
to
I'm
see
so
your
glad
face.
to
I
be
haven't
here.
seen your face in quite a while. It's so nice.
Mm-hmm.
I know. How have you been?
I've been really good. Well, I'll retract that. I'm good now. Last year was the worst year of my life. I had a
Really?
yeah.
What
It was,
happened?
well, it was just a kind of a stacking of a whole bunch of things. It was heartbreak with, very toxic relationship that I quickly exited, but it took a toll on my heart. And I had a business betrayal. I moved back from Nashville back to LA because during COVID I moved away. And moving back was weird and hard because everything, in my opinion, the prices like tripled while I was away, and then coming back and trying to find an area I would love living. So that was challenging. And then I missed teaching in person. I missed being at the Den when the Den was around. I missed all of the things I had been doing, prior to COVID, and it was all hitting me. So last year it was just like a culmination of everything. And, yeah, I had a rough one. But then this year I flipped it. And starting in January, I just had a really big talk with myself and started going back to the basics of all the things that I know work.
Talk about that. What was the conversation you had with yourself?
Yeah. So first of all, am I allowed to swear?
It's me.
Okay.
It's me who's hosting,
Okay,
and I
that's
curse like I curse like a motherfucker. So you're
perfect.
good.
So I said to myself, I said, Kordecki, get the fuck up. Get up one more time. Because it was one of those years where I felt like I didn't have it in me to get back up one more time off the floor, off the, the idea of being on the porcelain bathroom floor, right? Like that whole thing.
Mhm.
Like we've all been there where we've had these moments, fist to the sky, the whole thing. And I was feeling like I just didn't have one more hurrah in me. And finally, something had happened around New Year's and into the beginning of the year where I went on this journey with mushrooms, which is not something I really am into. I've never done it before. And I had the worst experience of my life, actually. I had a 72-hour trip on mushrooms, and nobody trips like that. I don't know why, but I tripped for 3 fucking days. And
That's interesting.
yeah, it was bad. I was the only one out of 12 of us who had that kind of an experience. Everyone else, after 12 hours, they came down. My body rejected it, and it was awful. I went into a deeper, dark hole than I'd been in all year. And at the end of that, when I finally came out of those 72 hours and then a few more days to kind of regulate. It was like January 11th. And that's when I said, Kordecki, get your fucking ass up. Restart, hit restart. Look at that journey on the mushrooms as you were in the abyss and the darkest hole ever. And it was like saying goodbye to that terrible year, and use that experience on the mushrooms as the worst ending possible to the worst year ever, and let it be the end of it.
Yeah.
And let it be
Stop it
done and
there.
start over. Stop it there. Yeah. And so I just hit go, and I had to do some forgiveness for all the people that I felt had betrayed me and hurt my heart. And so I did forgiveness letters ad nauseum. I did fuck you letters. I did I'm grateful for letters. I did silver lining letters. I did all the reasons I love me letters. I did, just all the things I know work: breath work, meditation, anger releasing, movement, everything I know for 3 weeks straight. And then suddenly, another big thing was I wanted to start being more social on social media. I wanted to start putting myself out there more. And so I just hit go on my recording videos. And I had never done like 2-camera videos like I started doing this year. And I had a couple that went sort of viral. And my Instagram account grew by 30,000 followers in a couple of
Amazing.
months. And it was just because I said yes to me, right? And I did all the things I know work, and I stopped stopping. And so I'm in a really beautiful relationship, and things are going great. And yeah.
And it's so funny because you said you did it for like 3 straight weeks. So did you kind of
Yes.
say like, okay, putting all the rest of stuff aside, this is what I'm doing for 3 weeks? Did you kind of like clear your calendar and it was like go time for healing time?
Kind of, but not. Like I knew I still had work to do, so I would take at least 3 hours every morning. And every morning it was a non-negotiable that I would work on this stuff. And so it ended up usually being 3 to 4 hours. Sometimes it'd be 2 hours of breath work on the floor, sobbing and rolling and crying. And other times it would be an hour and a half of journaling, and then it would be movement. Whatever I had to do to get the energy, the feelings out of my body, I just kept going after it. And it was every single morning for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And
Yeah,
when did you feel it immediately? Like if you're talking to people in the audience, like what was the journey for you within it?
Yeah, so within it, I was like, is this even working? Am I just wasting my time? Why am I doing this? I feel good for a minute. And then by the end of each day, like after I had done like the 3 hours, and I'd be high from the work. I'd be feeling good. I'd be feeling connected to my heart, and everything was good again. But then by the end of the day, all the fears and the demons and the things that had crushed me the year before would sneak back in. And so the next morning I'd go after it again. And so it was a dance of like good, bad feelings. And then finally, I don't know how I recognized it was kind of gone, where I was out of the abyss of, I call it the suck and the muck. I was in the suck and the muck. And I was talking to a client the other day, and I was saying, when we're in it, when we're in the shit, it feels like sucky and mucky. But then I always remind myself that out of the muck, out of the mud comes the lotus. And that is where the beautiful beauty is. We grow from that. And so if I didn't have the suck and the muck, this year wouldn't be as beautiful as it is. And yeah. And I just keep reminding myself of that.
Except but you really did do the work to bring the lotus out.
Yes, which is an important piece for everyone, all of us. Like to never think that. I always say to my clients too, I'm like, I wish I could give you an easy pass. I wish I could wave a magic wand and we didn't have to do the fucking work. But there's no escaping it, because there's two things that happen. I believe that either you implode, you do it to yourself, you beat yourself, you self-harm, you act out, or you explode. So you either implode or you explode when you're not doing the work. And either you're hurting the people you love by exploding, or you're imploding and hurting you. Right. So there's no escaping it, right? I think dive in, do the work, and just see what's on the other side.
It's true. It's like, it's painful regardless. So do you want to do the pain leading towards the beauty, or do you want to do the pain that keeps you in the pain?
That's right. Like, I feel like it takes just as much energy to be in the suck and the muck as it does to rise up and feel happy and joyful. And, they both take some time and energy, and why not go for the one that, at least you'll have higher vibration and better vibes and better feelings. I don't know.
And don't you think it's interesting how, and talk about why you think maybe, like you were saying, it was a bunch of things
Yeah.
kind of compiled to
Yeah.
get you into that place.
Right.
And doesn't it feel like that sometimes where it's all of a sudden like, oh my God, how many, your body can only handle your emotional, your physical, and your energetic body can only like handle so much. And then it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but talk about how like, because I mean, you've been, a beautiful breathwork practitioner, meditation
Thank
teacher, all
you.
these things for
Thank you.
quite a while
Thank
and
you.
very effective.
Thank
So, which I love when someone shares a story like that, knowing like this is what I do for a living, and I
you.
still had a shitty ass year where I had
That's
to
right.
lift myself up and get through it. Because again, I think it's a reminder to people: no one's immune,
Yeah.
and everyone's going through it. It's just some of
That's
us
right.
have, like, you could literally at one point just be like, okay, and here's my skill set and let's get to it.
Right.
So your coming out of it might have been a little tighter than someone else's just because you knew
Yes.
what to do and you trusted
Yeah.
that you could do it and you trusted there was something on the other side. So it was worth,
That's right.
for you, worth doing that work.
Yeah.
But like, talk a little bit about this idea that, sometimes just shit falls apart for all of us. And it does seem to happen all at the same time. And I don't know if that's an
Right.
energetic thing. Like once we get
Right.
knocked down, we just start attracting a little bit more, or if
Yeah.
it's, the universe being like, nope, time for a big shift. So we got to really like cut you down a few ways. But
Yeah.
what do you think?
I think it's both of those things that you said at the end there, that it's the universe saying it's time for a big shift and you have a big lesson you need to learn. So we're going to really knock you on your ass. And I think it's also once you're down and you're in that low vibration energy of the fear and the what ifs and all the things that happen, then you're not vibrating higher. So you're not attracting higher, right? Because you get stuck in the muck. And I think both of those things coexist at the same time. One, the universe is trying to give you a lesson, but two, now you're down and you're just, well, if you believe in law of attraction and all that, which I truly do, I believe that what we vibrate, we attract. And when you're in that low vibration, you're attracting more low vibration things. And then there's also what you said about, I think it's fun to share that. For me, it's fun to share that even though all the tools I have and all the skill sets I have, like you said, I still fell and I still took a while to rise back up. Usually, like my gap used to be this big where it would take me days and months and weeks, whatever, to get back to good. Now, because of all the skills I have, it takes me this amount of time. But this time it took me forever, it felt like, to get back to good, a whole year of being in the suck and muck until January. But what I think is interesting is that it just reminds us all that no matter what, you always have to sharpen your tools, right? So for me, it was a sharpening of my tools. Even though I have a lot of tools and I know how to use them, I got a little lazy with them. I'm
Yep.
like, oh, I know how to get myself back to good. I just breathe my ass off. I'm good. And I know how to do some anger work. I can get it out of my body. But no, I needed to sharpen some of those things. I needed to put a bunch of them together in a protocol. And it was just a really good reminder that, yeah, we're never done. We're never done on this journey.
What did you learn from like sharpening these tools? Like what for you was like, oh, I kind of needed to tweak this, or I learned that.
Yeah, well, one of the ones I learned is I used to love journaling a lot and I quit doing it. I just stopped journaling. And one of the things, the tools that I used that helped the most in this kind of coming back to good was the journaling. And I started just coming up with prompt questions, and I would put the prompt question at the top of the page and I would just let myself free write until I was out of words. And I would just write and write and write and write. And even though I have the worst handwriting in the world, I'm a lefty. And every time I write, I feel pain in my hand and it just
Same.
hurts. And yeah. Are you a lefty too? Or
No, but like my
just
hand
writing
gets
hurts? Yeah.
tired very
Yeah.
easily.
And so I just said, fuck it, just keep going, just keep going. And half the time I couldn't even read back what I wrote, but it felt so freeing to get those feelings out of my body. And one of the things I think about it too is that I think thinking is great, but thinking doesn't really serve our heart. And speaking is great, but speaking doesn't really always serve our heart. I think sometimes the writing of it is where the healing is, because the talking can be intellectual and too analytical and too left brained, right? So I believe that the writing is right brained and just more connecting to our heart. And so for me, the journaling piece was one of the things I'm like, I need to pick that back up again.
So are you still
So
journaling?
yes, and I love it, and I use it a lot with clients too. Like giving, I have a client that was bucking me about journaling. She's like, I don't want to journal. I hate journaling. And then she started journaling, and she wrote me 2 days ago. She's like, oh my God, who knew that journaling was so cool? But it just depends on how you do it, right? Like in giving yourself really good prompt questions, or using a journal guide that has great prompt questions. Because I think it just starts with one idea, and then from there things flow.
Is there a minimum amount of time you feel like people should write for?
I never like to put a time. One thing I also don't like to do is I don't ever like to say you have to write every day, or that you have to write for a certain amount of time, or that you have to write any particular thing. I think that the freer it feels, the easier people are with doing it. I think when we make it restrictive and confined and a must do for a certain amount of time, that it takes away some of the joy of it. I think write till you have nothing else to say. Yeah.
And you kind of hinted at this, but do you go back and read what you write?
Yeah, sometimes. Actually, I did read some of the forgiveness letters and the fuck you letters that I wrote. I read them actually a few months ago. I went
What
back
order
and
was it in? Fuck you first and then forgiveness, or?
I don't even remember. One day it was a fuck you, the next day it was a forgiveness. But yeah, it was a lot of stuff.
I mean, it's fair. That's the gamut of emotions. I mean, right?
Right. And by the way, I think that if we don't go through all of them, we're doing ourselves a disservice, because as a human, we have all levels of feelings and emotions we go through when there's been betrayal or loss of love or disappointment or a dream that didn't happen, whatever it is. And I think that we get to have all those emotions, because that's why we're a beautiful human. That's why we're not an animal. That's why we're a human. Humans are meant to feel. So.
Do you feel like, because you were saying it was kind of a toxic relationship, but it wasn't terribly long.
Yeah.
Was it very different than anything you've invited into your life before?
Yes. Yes. This was one that was, and look, I've had some picked wrong partners in the past, right?
Of course.
We all right. and sometimes I'm doing a master class right now, actually, on relationships and up leveling them. And one of the things we were talking about last night was like how, there's red flags, there's green flags, but there's also gray flags, and like how we sometimes, red flags are really obvious, green flags are really yummy, but sometimes we have to remember to not miss the gray flags that could sometimes turn into a red flag and turn into a green flag, depending on how we show up and how we be in the relationship. So even if, we've picked bad partners in the past, I think we have to remember that we're in charge of who we call in, right? So one of the things I learned after this relationship with this person was I saw red flags and I didn't pay attention to them. I saw gray flags and I dismissed them. And I think that, the good news is, because of all the skill sets I have, that I was quick to recognize, holy shit, this is toxic, in 2 months. If I didn't have the skills I had, I would probably be still in that relationship.
You didn't do the thing that I used to love to do, which is
dance,
like
the toxic breakup,
the dance, and also like I can make someone not toxic.
Yeah.
I can fix everybody.
I did try that for
There's
a minute.
Goodness in everyone, which I believe.
Yes.
I still believe that. But it's like this idea of like, there's goodness in everyone. They just need help seeing it and feeling it and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, it's like you're in a very toxic relationship for quite a while. And you're like, wait, never really changed.
Yeah. No, it's true. I did for a minute think that. And also one of the things I did, which I also recognized was one of the pitfalls for me, was I kept saying, well, I know her childhood trauma and I know why she's doing the behavior she's doing, so I give her a pass.
But I know. See, that's the trick.
Yeah. But now I've learned that
I was going to say, we need to talk about this, because I think that is a very gray area for most people. And especially, as you do healing work, I was just talking about this with someone, that balance of boundaries of, we were just having this conversation of, when you understand why someone behaves a certain way, it is very helpful. And it does take some of the sting out of stuff. But it doesn't mean it's not still affecting your own energetic being, or it's healthy for you. Right. And then it becomes that, like, how much do you allow because you understand someone's working through something, or they have their own trauma, and then how much do you protect? So go ahead.
No, that's exactly it. So, I just kept making excuses and saying, well, I understand. I know why she's behaving this way. And maybe she just needs to heal some of this and she'll be better. But then what I recognized at the end of it was like, if someone doesn't say, hell yes, I want to heal my childhood trauma, and they are passing it on to someone else in relationship, that's where I draw the line. So if someone says, I actively am going after it and I want to do the work, I see it, and you see them trying, you see them in therapy, you see them working with a coach, you see them doing all the things to heal it, and it's not impacting you as much because they're working on it, then maybe stay. But if not, I think you absolutely have to have a boundary that says, I can love you, but I also have to leave you. And I think that's where we all have to be better. Because even though I can see someone's pain and I can know why they behave a certain way, if it's affecting my nervous system and it's affecting my emotional health and my mental state and my ability to do the work I do in the world, that's when it's a no. For me now, I mean,
But talk about, because you were saying when it affects my nervous system, my ability to show up doing what I do, how was that manifesting for you?
Yeah, it was horrific, because so we had 2 months of bliss, and then things started happening about 2 weeks after the bliss phase, where I started saying, oh, no, this is going in a really bad direction. I'd seen the red flags, but I dismissed them. Ignored them, yeah. And so it was another month and a half of breakup behavior, and me giving chances and make up, break up, the begging and all of that, and then doing really terrible behaviors. And so in that month and a half, what was happening was I literally couldn't function. I was in a state every day where I was anxious about a phone call from her. I was crying profusely on certain days. I was always nervous of what was going to happen next, because I had given another chance and now we were together again, and I was waiting for the next shoe to fall. And so it was I literally, and thank God I had a friend during that time who was there for me, who supported me, who coached me, who guided me, who kept sending me videos to watch about narcissistic behavior and all the things that I felt was going on. And it truly helped me sort of regulate each day, but it was a day by day process.
Which is exhausting.
Yeah, and that was it. I was exhausted emotionally, drained emotionally. And at the end of it, I was like, it was a blocking. I had to cut off complete ties. There was no communication. There would be emails that come in and phone calls come in, and I just wouldn't respond. And it would be days and days and days of it. I had to completely stop engaging.
That's good advice too, because I would say that's where people usually falter.
Yeah, no, it was tough because I still had love.
The break.
Yeah.
Of course, well, you love someone, and also when they're coming back, they're usually coming back with total remorse and understanding and complete awareness of what they've done. So I feel like usually that hard blockade is where people falter. There's like a lot of,
it's hard.
Weak spots in the wall.
Yeah. And I had to do so much work on myself, so many tears, so much breath work, so much letting go of anger, of feeling like, how did this person who I thought we were in love, and I thought there was this beautiful future, and my heart was gutted because I didn't think I was going to ever find somebody like I would feel that way for again in a while. I hadn't felt that way for many years. And so it was gutting. But at the same time, I was like, I deserve so much more. I deserve so much more. And I knew that. And that is the way I was able to block. And I was able to go, no, stop. And I completely cut communication at one point where I didn't respond for weeks. And then I moved on. I started to move on. I started to heal my heart. And then I didn't talk to that person for a long time. And then months later, we had, a forgiveness conversation, and it was beautiful and lovely, and it made my heart feel better. And unfortunately for me, then really awful behaviors came out again, and I had to block it again. So
it's interesting.
For me, it was it's been a sad journey with this person, because I kept thinking maybe there'd be a way that we could have a forgiveness and really have it stick. But it didn't, because then she went back to her old behaviors again, even after that. So,
now, did you guys get back together at that point, or you were just trying to be friends?
No, we were trying to be friends. And there was a part of me where I was like, if there could be a change, maybe. I was open to exploring it because she had said she'd done her healing work. And
And the work, as you and I both know, and most people listening to this podcast, it's ongoing.
it's a never ending process. Because even when we get to the place where we're like, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm feeling great, then something else happens in our life that we have to deal with, and it's new triggers and it's new things we didn't know were there, and or we get whammied by something else in life that throws us off.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of times my favorites are the ones where like the area you've done a ton of work and you actually have seen total improvement. Like it doesn't
yeah,
affect you the same way, whatever it
right,
is. And then it's like 7 years later, something new comes in that just reawakens the whole thing. And you're like, God
yeah,
damn it. Like, didn't we do this whole thing already? And it is something that you really shifted behavior. It's not like you
that's
said you
right.
did it. Like behavior's totally shifted around it. But it's
Yes,
like that deeper thing comes in. You're like, now look, you are in a much better place, but it doesn't always
right,
feel like it in that moment because you just feel like you just went back to square one, which is not true at all. But that's
no,
like what your mind tricks you to thinking.
right, 100%. I love that you're saying that, because what I always talk to people about, and when I teach, I always say that, like, for me and for, I hope, all of us, I think it's always about just closing the fucking gap, closing
Mm-hmm.
the gap for how long it takes us to get back to good. If it used to take you
Yeah,
a year to get back to good and feeling happy again, and you've done some work and now it takes you 6 months, awesome.
that's a
If it used
win.
to take you 6 months, yeah, and now it takes you a month, fucking amazing. If now it takes you a day, you are a rock star. It's just about closing the gap,
Yes. And the
right?
work is what helps you. I say the same thing in class too. I always
Yeah.
say, like, it's like the goal isn't that all of a sudden you eradicate every bad thing that happens to you. Like, that's impossible.
That's right.
The goal is like, how do you just not get knocked over completely every single time something happens? Like,
Yes. Amen.
how can you like bob and weave more, just like you said, where it's like you
Hmm.
can like pick yourself up or
Yeah.
understand. um that's so interesting. So tell me though, so journaling was a big
Yeah.
thing that came back for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, before we move on, I want
Yeah.
to know what the grays are. Like, what are some of the gray
Oh,
areas that
so
people should look out for?
gray flags to me are things like, okay, I'll give a good example, like social media and privacy around things. Like, some people, like social media, you think, oh, it's fine, we're looking at each other's social media and it's all good, but then when they start like making comments about what people are saying on your social media, and at first it seems harmless, but this actually was one of the gray flags for me with this person. And at first it was like, oh, a comment every once in a while, and I was like, oh, that's not bad. Like, she would see someone comment beautifully, like, oh, you're so beautiful, or oh, the way you talk, or oh, this, and she would think it was my new lover. And I'm
Right.
like, I don't even know that
You're like, I've
person.
never even
Yeah,
talked to this
yeah, I
person.
don't know them. And why can't someone compliment me without it being a bad thing? And, I saw that happen a few times, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of harmless. But to me, that was a gray flag that then became very red, because
Jealous.
then it became, she would say that and then break up with me on top of it. I think that's your new lover, and now we're done. And so
That's
that's a
such
great,
a horrible time. I've been there too, that you're
yeah,
blamed for every insecurity someone has.
yeah,
And it's
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 a
a
tough
it's
one.
a brilliant trick because
Yeah,
as they do it, like they're insecure. So they start creating these worlds where you're the one fucking
yeah,
up. Like you're the one attracting this attention, or
right,
you're the one who
right,
did something, even if you hadn't.
right.
And it happens like so largely and so fast that you're kind of sitting there like gobsmacked, kind of like,
Yeah.
wait, did I
Hmm.
do something that big?
Exactly. No, you
Because
start to question yourself. Am I
you
a shitty
question yourself.
person? Am I a fucking flirt? Am I just starting shit?
And also, don't you question yourself because you do the work and your nervous system is more regulated?
Yeah.
Sometimes, for me, it was a little bit too of this idea of like, no one possibly could react that way. Like, that seems
Yeah.
so extreme for something
Yeah.
so small. Like, wouldn't a
Right.
conversation happen? Like,
Right.
so in my mind, I'm like, well, if someone's reacting that big, then was there something else I did? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I'm like,
Yes.
no one would just react that way. That just feels
100%.
so,
100%.
in my mind, I was like, that just feels so ungrounded, right? But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yes, all gray
No,
flags.
that
Interesting.
that one, another one too, is like, about finances, like financial, like, so if you're in a relationship with somebody and you are someone that likes to be really forthcoming about finances and background and how you spend money, what you do with money, are you in debt, are you not in debt, and that person is sort of coveted or secretive about it, that could be a gray flag, but that could turn into a red flag if you get married or if you commingle funds and then they're not open about their finances, and then you get into trouble because they were in debt or they had issues. So like thinking about all the little things, I'm trying to think, I had a whole list of the gray flags, that there's things like, controlling, semi-controlling, that it shows up a little gently at first, but you're like, well, maybe it's just being there, being protective. But then that could be like in relationship, super controlling.
Right.
If it started out kind of gentle and, oh, they're just being protective of me, or they just, like to make sure I know they're my woman or they're my man.
Right. And depending what relationship you came out of, you may love that. If you felt neglected in your last relationship, you might be like, they care so much. They really see me and pay attention.
Yeah.
That's what's also tricky, which I think people forget. So much of like what we go into a new relationship sometimes is a reaction of what we came out of last, if it's like close at all, or sometimes even not close.
Yeah.
So things like that, but is a legit gray flag of controlling. If you were feeling neglected, like in the beginning, that might feel amazing.
Really perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. Another thing we're talking about too in this masterclass, speaking of all this stuff around gray flags, red flags, is not only in relationship do you need to worry about that and think about that. Well, not worry about it, but be mindful. I would say have your antenna up. Be sure that you're noticing, and also, I'm not listening to people's words anymore. I'm just watching actions. Period. The fucking end. I'm watching I'm reading your energy. I'm looking at your vibe, and I'm watching your actions. If your words and your actions don't match, bye-bye. Because that to me is the biggest sign of who you're going to be, how you're going to show up for me. Because I can talk a lot of smack, I can talk a lot of stuff, but if my actions aren't backing up what I'm talking.
Well, it's interesting because, and by the way, your actions always back up how you're talking, but you are inherently a very good talker too. Like I know that, but I am too. Like it's like your brain works in a way that you can communicate quickly,
right,
and effectively. Do you sometimes? I mean, I think that's an amazing, beautiful boundary to put up. Do you feel like you ever fell into this idea of, because words for you are so easy and fast, like actually kind of wanting the words from people? Do you know what I mean?
Oh my God, all the time, all the time. I want to put a pin in that, and I want to go back to one thought. So I'm going to answer that question. But where I was going to with that other idea about words and actions matching and relationship, I just wanted to say this thing about attachment styles. And I don't want to get into a whole discussion. It's a big topic, but because we were talking about like how depending on what you came out of, right, you might react differently and might need a certain thing because of what your last relationship was, but also depending on how that person was raised or given the love or not loved or not taken care of, and they have developed an attachment style. I don't know if everyone understands what those are. It's just referring to the way you were raised and were your needs met or not met as a child, and usually it's from 0 to 8, right? And if by 8, usually we've developed a lot of our beliefs and needs, and all of our things are set, sort of. So we develop an attachment style based on how we were loved and the kind of love we were given. And so it's anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, secure attachment, disorganized attachment style. These are all the different styles, and they all mean different things. It's kind of a big topic, but depending on how someone was raised and loved on will be how they'll show up in relationships. So if you were raised and loved in a beautiful way, and then your partner wasn't, and their needs weren't met, and they weren't given the things, then you guys are dancing with two different attachment styles of loving. So you also have to take that into consideration, not just flags, but also like what's their attachment style? How do they love in relationship based on how they were raised? So there's all these things, right? And then, even though sometimes you're in a secure attachment, you feel securely attached, that's the style you were raised, you had all your needs met, you were loved properly, you were cared for, you got to express yourself, so you have a secure attachment. But then you get with someone who's not, then you become avoidant attachment. Then you change. So even though we were raised a certain way, we feel good, and we feel like we had all our needs met, we can sometimes still dance between those styles. Right? So you've got flags, you've got attachment styles, you've got the last relationship bullshit. Fuck.
Well, that's why I laugh when people are like, relationships are supposed to be easy. It's like, no, there's a lot that goes into them. I mean,
Yeah.
exactly what you just said. There's like so many different things.
Facets and things. Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into them. So then talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the power of like how you were someone who's so good with words. Did you ever want like just want that?
So I always want that. And that's I feel like that might be one of my, not weaknesses, because I think it's a good thing to want to pull someone up to be able to express freely and be vulnerable. But I think sometimes I can be hard on people. I guess if I'm being honest, it can
Me
be
too.
hard. Yeah, it can be hard because I expect a lot, right? Because I know I try to show up, and I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes in relationship because of my upbringing. I had a very dysfunctional relationship. I am technically an avoidant attachment style, but I've worked really hard to become more secure attachment style. So for me, now that I use my words, now that I do like to have healthy communication and express fully and be vulnerable, which I think is a huge strength of mine, is being vulnerable in relationship. I cry all the time when I talk. I'll be talking, sharing a feeling, and I start bawling, and my partner's just staring at me like this, and I'm like, I just emote too much. Am I just too vulnerable for everybody?
I'm
But
an
the point
emoter
is
too.
like, yeah, and I love to be vulnerable. I love to show my heart. But when I'm with someone who isn't as vulnerable or expressive, I do crave more, and I do ask for it. And I mean, I've exited a couple of relationships because that person wouldn't pull up and become more. And I've asked for it. I try to ask kindly. I present it really sweetly. And I'll say, look, I love you as you are. I don't want to change you, but I know how I am and I know what I need. And one of the things I need is vulnerability. And I need someone who can express freely. And if you don't think that is a part of you that you could show ever, I mean, you're not showing it now. We've agreed that. But I know for me that long term in this, my heart will be sad. And I just say, I got to go.
You're a very
Or,
good advocate for yourself.
thank you.
No, but you
I
are. I
try to.
mean, yeah, because
And
I
if
think
we don't,
that's especially in relationships, I think that gets a little wonky for people because,
yeah,
it's hard to advocate for yourself sometimes. You think you are or you think you want to, but then you're like you said before, you could be thinking so much about the other person, what they need and what they want that you
yeah,
stop advocating for yourself.
yeah. Well, I try. It took me a long time to learn that, right? To learn that skill. I think for a lot of years I didn't advocate for myself, and I just accepted or tried to work with what I was given or how they were showing up. And I think that just is age, right? With age, we have wisdom, and so the older I get, the less I'm willing to just settle. I think, and I just got really good at asking for what I need.
So let's back up. And by the way, I've loved this conversation about relationships, but
Oh,
let's back up
thank
to
you,
you're this incredible breathwork instructor and practitioner and
thank you.
meditation teacher. But how did you, and you said you came from a little bit of a dysfunctional family. What did
Mm-hmm.
that mean for you? Like, what did that look like? And then how did you
Yeah.
breathe them out?
Yeah. Well, wow. So that took a minute. I've told my story so many times, and I always try to make it, still not feel like it didn't impact me, because it did, even though I can talk very surfacey about it right now.
Mhm.
But it was a lot of things. It was, I was raised on and off in foster care, which is the first thing. But I was raised by a mom who, I'm sending her all the love, even as I ever speak about her. We're estranged right now for 15 years. And it was a choice of mine because of, toxic behaviors, dysfunctional, narcissistic behavior, I believe. And it took me a lot of years to kind of reconcile some of the things that happened to me in her care, sexual abuse and things like that, because of her poor decision making or irresponsibility as a mom. And you can make the claim, well, she did the best she could with what she had, and she did. But that said, it impacted me in the way I was raised. And I didn't meet my real biological father till I was 40. I was adopted at 12. And then, because of some of the dysfunction in my childhood, I got really addicted to cocaine at my early 20s. And it was because I never dealt with all of the trauma from my childhood. And as a teen, I struggled to find myself. I felt very lost. I was confused. I didn't understand what I was here for. I used to always ask the question, what is my purpose? Why am I here? And I struggled hard, and I fell into the drug addiction, and it almost killed me. So for me, that's how my childhood dysfunction manifested as an adult. From like 21 to 26, I was heavily addicted. I mean, to the point of like 5 days in a row using with no sleep, staying up, just using and using and using. And I existed only to get high. And so for me, the day that I finally said, I want to live, because I was close to dying, I think, was my rock bottom. And that's when I got clean from that drug. And so that began my journey of working on myself. And it took me a lot of years to see how could I work on myself, because from 26 to 30, I still didn't know. And then at 30, I was so fortunate and lucky to meet a woman who became my life coach and my mentor, who was just my touchstone, my rock in the world. And she's no longer here, but I always talk about her still as the most important person in my life, because she finally made me feel worthy. She showed me that I mattered, right? And she didn't make me, but she showed me how to find myself again. And then I realized I'm worthy, I matter. And for a lot of years, I didn't think so. So, yeah.
So when you're going in and out of foster care, are you going back to your mom in between?
Yeah, we actually did. I had a brother, a half brother, and he and I were in and out of foster care for a few years. But before that, I bounced personally from a family member of this guy that was finally going to adopt me, back to her, I mean, I don't know why. I counted once, and I think I was in 12 different schools in 12 different cities in 12 years. So it was a lot of change, right? Instability. And it affected how I grew up, because I grew up not expecting anything to last, not expecting love to last, not expecting friends to last, not expecting to find stability or what home meant, life meant, love life meant. I didn't have a picture of that.
Were there any places that even felt good, or did you not even allow yourself?
What's interesting is I, looking back, don't ever remember feeling sad about what was going on. I think, and that's part of why I had this hard sort of exterior. People would look at me when I was younger, and they still may now, but like, it's say, I thought you were such a bitch. You have such as walls around you and blocks. But then I got to know you have such a mushy fucking heart. And I'm like, yeah, that is my truth. But I put all these walls up for protection, because I was scared of everyone and everything. And I didn't want to be seen. I didn't know how to show up. And so, yeah, I bounced around a lot, and I think it just, it shaped a lot of who I became initially until I started doing the work on me.
And when you would go back to your mom, so what ages were you bouncing in and out and going back to your mom?
Yeah, from like 0 to 12, 0 to 12, like from when I was born all the way in and out. And then finally we got taken away from her by the state, because she was deemed an unfit mom. And then we were like for 1.5, like a year and a half, 2 years in a foster family, where we actually lived with one family. But before that, we were just bouncing from a couple of families, and then we go back and then bounce.
So in hindsight, not hindsight, but like as someone who's been through this, I'm curious and I have no opinion on it.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been better if they deemed her unfit earlier? Or would that have been worse? Because then you would have been in, like, what do you, just as a comment on our system and how it works, I'm curious.
I feel like every single thing, everything I went through was perfect. So like all of that bouncing around, it's gonna make me choke up a little bit.
I mean, this is a place for it. Go for it. I emote a lot too, so you're safe. You're safe here.
Thank you. Every home I went to, every family that took us in, every place I was with for 6 months and then gone from, I made a new friend. I went to a new school. I learned something. Because like I said, I started to say, don't think I finished the thought, that I don't remember being sad. I don't remember feeling unhappy. I think I was that kid that just knew how to survive it. And I put up these walls and I put up these guards and I protected myself. So everything I saw and went through felt happy until it didn't. There was a point, actually, when we were with that foster family for about 1.5 years, where they were really, really religious. It was in Nashville. It was in the South, and well, it's not so South, but South enough at that time that they just had the very, very, very Christian beliefs, but they were strict. And my brother was very hyperactive, and he was always in trouble, and the father would beat him. And I would hear him crying, and I would hear him getting beaten again and again and again. And I just was losing it. I was so sad. And I was like, I think I was 11 or 12 at this point. And I remember calling our social worker one day, and I said, please move us out of this family. I hate it here. We hate it here. They're hurting my brother. Can you move us? And at that point, they made a decision, because they couldn't find another family to take us both, to send us. He had a biological dad, and I didn't have a dad that was, well, I did, but I didn't know him. But I had this man that had been staying in my life since I was a kid, since I was 2. And he adopted me at 12, which was what, and so to send us to both of our dads so that we could go with family, quote unquote family, they made that choice. And so then I was with him and his new family. He had remarried. He had married my mom briefly. That's how he came into my life. And I lived with them for 4 years, which gave me a little bit of semblance of family life, of discipline, of rules and all of that. But I had the stepmom syndrome thing. So the stepmom hated me. So then I lived in a household where they fought about me all the time. She was unhappy that I was there. She thought I was a slut. She thought I was all these things.
Why is it always when you get the teen girl, they always think they're a slut? I feel like,
yeah,
I mean, my
she
friend tells me
hated
the
me.
same story.
It's real though, and I thought, oh, that's such bullshit, but I was living it. It is real. With that scenario, it doesn't happen in every family, but for me, it did happen. And funny enough, though, after I left there, we became really close. It's funny. Like while I lived with them, she didn't love me, but once I left, she loved me really hard in a beautiful way. So that was a very sweet story. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot.
Do you consider, like, so when you think of family,
Yeah.
do you consider having, like, what's family to you?
Whew, well, that's a good one. Because family now for me is still that man that adopted me is in my life. I call him my dad. He is my family, and I've got stepbrothers and sisters with him. I've got my half brother Greg, who I adore and love, and who I'm very close with. And that would be my immediate family, people I call family. But then family now for me are the friends I have. Some of my clients who've become good friends. My partner, when I'm in relationship, becomes my family. And that's been good for me.
And when you would bounce back and forth when your mom was still in the picture,
Yeah.
do you remember, like, I know you were like, you were happy, you knew how to be happy. Was there a period of shift, like when you were younger, were you happy to go back to your mom? And then were you always happy to go back to your mom, or did that shift at some point? Like, did you just start getting smart enough to get angry at her? Like what?
Such a beautiful question. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. In the beginning, I would miss her so much, and I put her on a pedestal. I idealized her. But she has so many beautiful qualities. She's an amazing artist. She was a singer, creative. She very strong energy, funny, so many beautiful qualities. So as a kid, she was my idol. I was like, she was gorgeous. And I was like, oh my God, I miss my mom so much. So we'd go back and I'd be like, yes, I'm with my mommy. And it would be awesome. But then from that period of 12 to 16, I missed her a lot. I didn't see her at all. And then at 16, I went to visit her. She lived in California, and I was living with the family that adopted me, who I call my dad. And we were in Wisconsin, and I went to visit her one summer in Venice, California, which is where she lived. And I just didn't go home. I was so happy to be with her. I had missed her so much. And I called my dad and I said, I'm not coming home. And if you don't let me stay, I'm going to emancipate myself and I will choose to stay here. And he's like, well, I can't fight you. She's your biological parent, even though I adopted you. If you want to stay, you can stay. So I stayed with her. And in about 6 months of living with her, we had a small studio apartment in Venice, and I lived with her and went to Santa Monica High School. I was putting myself in school. I realized in 6 months she was crazy and she was unhealthy for me. And I moved out. I was still in high school and I moved out. I got an apartment. I got 2 jobs and I finished school. But because I realized, oh my God, I'm idolizing someone who's just dysfunctional and showing up in all these creative ways and eccentric ways. But really, she's unhealthy for me. And she would say really hurtful things to me. You know, didn't know my biological dad, but she chose to have me, right? And she could have not, and she would use that and say, "You're lucky you're even here," or I could have had an abortion, you wouldn't even be here. And so she would throw that. There were just things like really hurtful things that hurt my soul. And I finally just made the decision to leave when I moved out. And from that point, I started knowing that my mom's not who I put on a pedestal, and there's some dysfunction and lots of unhealthy behavior here.
And isn't it interesting? And it shows you what that mother-daughter relationship is,
Which is
that
our
it
most
took
important
you
one. Yeah.
until 16, where you've
Yeah.
already been adopted by a whole nother person that's not
Yeah.
biologically related to you.
Yeah.
And you've been in and out of foster care and then with the foster family. And it was still at 16, you were still like, nope, this is who I want to live with. And it's
Yeah.
almost as if, I'm so curious. So talk to me about, I mean, that's a lot. So you finish high school on your own in an apartment, basically as an adult,
Yeah.
with jobs, but minus that, which is already hard enough. Talk about this idea of emotionally realizing this huge truth about your mom.
Yeah. That was devastating. Now, honestly, if I'm so honest about that, it broke my heart. Because
Yeah.
I really, and even still to this day, like when I think back on the feelings I have, I still love her deeply, but not in the same way. It's a different relationship with the love I have for her. But we would go out. I remember we would go out together in Venice, and we would say we were sisters because she was young enough looking, and we looked alike and a lot alike. And so we would go places, and she didn't like to be called mom. So she would just say, "You're my sister. We're sisters. You're my little sister." And we would go to clubs together. We dance together. We would play. And I just had so many beautiful memories when it was good, until I really recognized that it was also unhealthy and toxic for me. But so it broke my heart, because I had to remove myself from relationship with her. And still to this day, I can be sad about it, but I also am smart enough and wise enough now to know that in her energy, I am not the best version of myself. I lose myself to wanting to save her. And then that's not good for me. And I can never fix her. Like, if someone doesn't want to fix themselves, and now she's in her 80s, and it's been a lot of years of the same behavior of being the victim, of being a narcissist, and being dysfunctional and not wanting to do anything about it. And I can't save her. That was
Isn't
up to
it
her.
interesting that we kind of started with the conversation of just relationships and just this idea, and because I was saying, wow, you really you're a good advocate for yourself. Like, you really
Thank you.
stand up and know how to set the boundaries. And interesting that really your first lesson in that big time was your mom.
So, yeah, that's good. That's right. And yeah, I mean, I still often, even in the last year, my brother and I were both actually estranged from her now. He took longer than me to go there, because he just and he's a guy. It didn't impact him as much. And he even says it. He goes, "I just don't let her affect me. I just don't care," until he does. And then
Right.
finally he goes, he'll call me like three after, like I usually end it quicker than he does. Like, we tried to revisit a relationship with her a few months ago. She had a important surgery, hip replacement surgery, and we both said, let's show up for her. Let's just be there for her. Let's take her. Let's be there when she comes out of surgery, and let's see if we can try one more time, because we do this every couple of years. So we did, and we went, and it was first day. It was awesome, because she was still high on all the drugs, and it was amazing. And I was like, there's hope. And then, like, day 2, day 3, day 4, it just whittled back to the same behaviors, and me being in the room with her at the hospital, just going, I don't feel any connection to this human in front of me. The way she talks, how angry she is, how she turns everything into a negative. I feel I zero. And it hurt me to even feel that. But so I left. And after a few days spent seeing her in the room at the hospital, I received a bunch of texts from her one day, like an ad nauseum list of like ramblings of like maybe 20, 30 texts, so long that they wrap around on your phone, which I've never had those kind before from anyone. And just her going off, being crazy again. And I blocked her. And I told my brother, I said, Greg, I'm out again. I can't do it. I was hopeful for a second. There was a glimmer where I saw maybe. And then I realized, it was just the drug. She was still high from the after surgery. And I said, so I'm out. I'm removing myself. It's too toxic for me. I can't have my phone, which is a beautiful place for me to engage with friends and family and lovers and people that I do care about, be now this place where she unloads. And so I blocked her. And he's like, well, I'm just not. I think there's hope. I'm like, go, more power to you, brother. I love you. And then 3 weeks later, he's like, I'm on your team. I'm out again. She's fucking crazy. And look, no disrespect. So if she probably may ever listen to this, I don't mean it in a bad way, but I have to be honest. I have to be able to speak my truth about that relationship.
Of course. It's so beautiful, your relationship with your brother. I mean, and as awful as it is, you guys had to go through that together. How lucky you had each other.
Yeah, he's the silver lining of that for sure for me.
And I was going to ask, because it sounded like you went through the schools and stuff, like you said, pretty upbeat, making friends. Yeah. Did he have it as easy in that sense emotionally, or was he kind of a smooth sailor too?
He did.
And you know what I mean by easy. I know it's
not
easy.
No, I know exactly. No, I feel you. I know what you mean. He, I think did pretty good, but I know he did struggle with the hyperactiveness. He had, I think ADD or ADHD. I don't know for sure which version, but he was, and I think he got into trouble a lot for that, like at school, and even I think with his dad and stuff, he struggled a little bit with that kind of stuff. But we've never talked about what that journey was like for him. It's a really good question. It's funny. He called me yesterday. I think I'm going to ask him that. Thank you for prompting.
Be curious.
Yeah.
Because it is. I mean, imagine you're an extrovert. Like, imagine if you were an introvert going through that. It'd be brutal. Like, you'd never make a friend because you would just be like, easier for me to just put my head down and like, so how, I'd be curious after you ask him. Let me know.
I'm going to ask him. I will.
And then you said you met your dad.
My biological dad.
Yeah.
So I had his name, and you might go, well, why would you want to meet a man that did that? But so for me, the struggle was that I just needed to know how I became to be me, who has part of my genes in me. What does he act like? I just had a fantasy of seeing him, feeling him, knowing him, understanding him. And I didn't really want to have a relationship with him. I just wanted to see him, even if it was for a second. And so I started searching and Googling and looking. And so one time I found what I thought was his address, and I sent him a picture of me. And at that time, it was after I'd gotten out of I was in sobriety after getting off of the drugs. I was like 26 or something, and I was starting to do some acting work. So I had a headshot, and I sent him my headshot with this long letter. And I'm like, I know you're my dad, and I just wanted you to see what I'm doing in the world. And please reach out if you want to talk to me. And so I know I never heard back.
I was going to say that's the recipe of disappointment.
It was awful. I know. It was awful. I never heard back. So another 10, 15 years goes by, and I'm in this relationship with this beautiful woman, and I'm sharing with her about my story about wanting to find him. And she goes, we are finding your dad. I don't care what it takes. I am finding this man for you. So every now and then we'd go on, we'd Google and we'd look, and no luck. One day she comes running into the bedroom, and she's like, I found him. And I'm like, what? She goes, I think I found your dad. She goes, come here. And so she shows me all the public records. She bought, like, you could do the searches on a name, and she bought public records, and all the things lined up. Like, we heard he lived in San Francisco. We knew what age he was. We knew what profession he was in, first and last name. So there was like a ton of his names. So we crossed out all the ones that couldn't be the right age, that didn't live where he's supposed to live. And we circled the last one. And there was a phone number to an office. And I'm like, my heart was beating fast. I was sweating. I'm like, I'm going to call him. I'm going to call and leave a message, or I'm going to call him and talk to him. And she goes, really? And I'm like, yeah, I have to. So I got up. It took me a few days, but then, so I call and I get his voicemail, and it says, you've reached the psychology offices of Dr. da 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 da. And so I'm like, he's a psychologist and I'm going to make an appointment with him. So I
Ooh.
call and I go, hi, so-and-so. This is Miss Kordecki. I don't say who I am to him. I'd like to make an appointment to come see you. And I tell him what my issue is, what I want to work on. And I'm in LA and he's in San Francisco. And I go, I don't know if you're taking new patients, but if you are, I'd love to make an appointment with you. So I don't hear back for a week or 2 or 3. Then one day I'm working out and my girl comes running in. She's like, guess who's on the phone? We just got a message from him. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, call him back, call him back. So I call back and I make an appointment to go see him as a patient. So he doesn't know who I am. And she goes with me. We drive up to San Francisco. We get a hotel and I have an appointment. So I go in, he opens the door and I'm like, oh my God, I'm staring at my dad.
What does he look like as far as what you expected,
tall,
or does he anything similar to you?
Yeah, I've got his jawline. I've got his nose. He's tall. I don't have that. I didn't get his height, but like, there's a lot. I see a lot in me, in him. And so at this point, he still thinks I'm a patient. And so we go up and we sit down. We're in the office.
It's like a movie.
I wanted to write a movie about it at one point. So anyway, so we're sitting there and I brought a little mini tape recorder with me because in my mind, I'm like, I may never ever see this guy again. I want to record his voice. I want to record the conversation. And it was in my purse. So I hit record and I recorded it. And my girlfriend's with me, asked her to come into the session. And I couched it under the idea that we wanted to have a child together. And we were struggling with intimacy issues. And that's what we were coming to talk to him in therapy about. And so we start talking and, I start saying how we're struggling and, we really want to do this. We're having some intimacy issues. We want to have a baby. The reason why we're struggling, I think I say, is because I don't know my father. I never met my dad. I don't have a father figure in my life. And I think I've been struggling with that. So I'm having a hard time connecting. And then I freeze for a second and I look at her and I get tears in my eyes because I told her when we walk in, I go, I might tell him I'm his daughter and I might not. If I look at you and I look at you for support, just nod your head yes or no, whether you think I should. So in that moment I froze and I looked at her and I had tears and she's like, do it. So I look back and I go, and I don't know my dad, but I have reason to believe he is you. I believe you're my father. And he froze and he goes, you're going to give an old man a heart attack. He goes, what are you talking about? And I said, well, do you know? And I say my mom's name. I know that you know her. Here's a picture of her. And I bring a picture out. And he's like, and he was honest with me. He's like, yes, I know her. Yes, here's what happened. His story didn't match hers. Of course, they have different stories. And he said, you look so much like me, but I am going to have a heart attack right now.
I mean, can you imagine? Someone has no clue you exist.
Yeah, he goes, give me a second to collect myself. He actually did know I existed because she called him and said, I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby. And he said, I want nothing to do with it.
Oh, he was, to be honest about that's amazing.
But he was, that's why I was a little bit shocked. So he said, what do you want to know? I get why you're here. Ask me anything. And so I asked a bunch of questions that I wanted to know, and he shared a bunch of things. And that part of it was really sweet and beautiful. And I got some info about my medical history and my ancestors and things. And then at the end, like a fool, like we always do, I go, well, first of all, I said, how much do I owe you? He said, this one's on me. Of course. Nice guy. So I said, would you, and he's remarried and he has 2 kids. So I have 2 siblings that I, of course, would want to meet. And I said, would you want to stay in my life and start to get to know each other? And he said, no, I don't think that's a good idea.
Wow.
So it was nice to meet you, Miss Kordecki. Have a beautiful life. And I left. So I'm crying in the car. I'm like, of course I put myself out there. Of course I tried one last time. And then a month later, I even called back and said, this is how bad, when we have a need that was unmet as a kid, right? It was unmet, this fulfillment of knowing your real father. And I think, so I called and I said, this is my one last attempt to see if you're interested in having it. Because of course I've watched so many fucking movies of people who reconnect with a parent years later. And so I'm picturing that. And he then called back and was actually very, very mean. And he said, if you ever call me again, please lose my number. Please don't ever reach out to me again. I've got a new life. I've got a new family and I want nothing to do. So, yeah. And again, enlightening again, like, what's the saying by Maya Angelou that Oprah always talks about? When people show you who they are, believe them, right?
Yeah.
So I should have known, obviously, just by his actions when he was younger. He didn't want a kid. He meant that. He didn't want me in his life. He meant that,
I'm
right?
so sorry. That's a hard.
Nah, it's okay. All that made me stronger, right? It all made me stronger.
Yeah, and talk about when you discovered breath work. I mean, literally
Yeah,
connecting it to all this,
yeah.
how something as powerful as breath work really helps move the
Mm,
energy of these traumas.
mm. So powerful. For me, the good news is, the beautiful thing is, I discovered breathwork at the Den, and I got to take my very first class there. And it was when I was going through a relationship that was really was a tough one, because it was one of those ones, like we talked about earlier, where we want to save the person. And this was someone who I felt was having kind of a nervous breakdown, and there were some behaviors going on that she wasn't necessarily being abusive to me, but she was just hurting herself. And I wanted to try to fix and save, and I couldn't, and it wasn't working. And so we were breaking up, but it became very painful for my heart. And I was struggling with leaving her, because I was just worried about her health and her mental state. And someone said to me one day, why don't you go try breath work? Like, you have all the tools for other things. And those tools actually weren't working at the time, but they said, I bet breath work will help you. So I said, I'll try anything right now. And I went. And I had this amazing experience. You know what people say, like, what the fuck just happened, right? The
Mm-hmm.
cracking open, the feelings coming out, all of the tears, things that I thought I had cleared out and worked on with my original life coach, my spiritual guide, at 30. And I worked with her for probably 10 years. And I've done so much work, but there was still more in there. There's always more, right?
Yeah.
And especially with a lot of, well, obviously I've gone through a lot. So there was more that I didn't even realize was still there. And that was the beginning. Also, at that time, I was in this weird position, crux of my career. I was a fitness trainer, quote unquote celebrity fitness trainer at this time, and working in the industry, all around fitness and wellness. But I was getting burnt out, and I was feeling like there's got to be another iteration of me in this work, next level. And I just didn't know what it was or how to go there, because I'd been doing fitness for 21 years at that time. And that's a long time to be in a career and to just pivot and change. So I knew I needed to change, but I didn't know what. So that night, when skies parted and all this stuff came out of me, and I was like, holy shit, I regulated and I got back on track in my relationship. I was able to leave it with grace and integrity and send that person on their way, hopefully to, their better place. But so that helped me move the needle in my life. But then I also said in that moment, oh my God, this is the thing that could be the next iteration of what I do. Because all the work I've ever done is about helping people see their truth, the goodness in them, find the happy in them, find their joy again, because it's always in us. We just need to uncover it and peel away the bullshit that hides us from it, or hides it from us. And so that's all. And I did that through fitness. I do that through massage. I've done that through the coaching work I had done previous to now what I do. And so that's all I've ever cared about after I got off the drugs, was to help people find their way back to joy. And so when I saw the breath work as a potential new tool, I was like, this is the thing. This is what I'm meant to do next. And so then that began the journey. I just started going to class every day and learning and studying it and doing my own work first with it, like letting it peel the layers away.
It does peel you open.
Yeah, it peels
Like,
you
that's what
open.
people don't understand. The breath is so intense.
Yeah.
It like shakes up your nervous system to allow it to just
Yes.
let go of all the shit it's holding on to.
That's right. That's right. And it's things that, even though you think you've done the work, things you didn't realize were still there, because it's deeper layers, right?
That was
Yeah.
my first time. I joked,
Yeah.
like, all of a sudden by the end I'm bawling, and I'm like, I didn't know I was still sad about that. Like, that was my thing. The thing that came out, I was like, I was still so sad about that. And I was.
I know. And that's the thing. It's like, I think that, sometimes when we do the work, it's very heady and very surfacey, because that's the way we're taught. Like, go to talk therapy to talk it out, da, 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 da. And no disrespect to talk therapy. I think it's beautiful, but I think it doesn't go, in my opinion, deep enough.
Yeah.
Deep enough to those layers that are really hidden and really protected and guarded. And talking, to me, just doesn't get it out. So yeah, it was, and so then that began my journey. And then Well, you were the first person that hired me to teach. So that was how I started
And you
I
were
just,
amazing, and you had a
well,
huge following
thank
right off the
you.
bat
Thank you.
because you're
Thank
so effective and good at what you
Thank
do.
you. Mm,
And I do think like your student said to you, you spin, gold out of your pain. Is that what they said?
yeah.
I think that is your, I feel like every teacher, every good teacher has a thing.
Yeah.
It's not
Special
something you
sauce or
cultivate
something.
on
Yeah.
purpose. It's like, it's just why your purpose of teaching, like what you're providing and coming from. And I do feel like that is a
Mm,
beautiful part of who you are, and you do it,
thank
but you
you.
do it with power. Like you're very powerful and strong. I mean,
Thank you.
obviously, look what you've
Thank
gone
you.
through, but
Yeah.
that comes across like you're not the teacher that's like soft
Mm,
spoken and holding your
right.
hand, which by the way, nothing wrong with
No,
those
no,
teachers either.
right. I always say there's different flavors of it, right? But
Because
I'm definitely not that
no, you're
style,
not that.
right? Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
needs, and everyone needs different things.
Different
So
things, right?
same thing. I'm pretty strong too. And I always tell
Yes.
people if you
Yes, you are.
need more of the hand holding, which is okay, I'm probably not it. And then you'll probably get
Yep.
frustrated with me
That's
and like
right.
feel like, oh, like it just won't be the right energy match. So that's all I mean by that stuff. But you are
That's right.
very strong,
Yeah.
you're tough, and like that's who you are. But
Hmm.
in turn, that's what you're teaching. And I think that's really
Yeah.
beautiful. And you said
Mm,
something really
thank you.
beautiful about what it started to help you do, which was find the truth of like the beauty that lives in all of us. And I feel like coming from you, who's had so much, I mean, literally the twists and turns, like there is a movie there, but the disappointments, and we're not just talking like little disappointments, we're talking identity disappointments of like who you are, who are the base people that are supposed to be taking care of you. You went through
Mm,
so many of
thank
them.
you.
So the fact that you are someone who can be like, no, 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 everything
Mhm.
is bullshit. There is a beauty and
Mm,
a truth in all of us. Like some of us might need more work to uncover it and get there, but like it exists. I think that message is huge. And so,
thank you.
and coming from
Thank
you,
you.
I feel like people can trust it.
Thank you for that so much. Thank you for all those kind words. Yeah, I think for me, I've been really, really lucky that the people that have been attracted to my style have said what you've said. That the reason why they come to me is because they know they can trust me to kick their ass, but also to be there with a soft place to land at the
Mm-hmm.
end when the tears do come and when they do let it all go. And I think I've been able to balance that pretty well. I think that I know that sometimes we need the tough love because that's what I had to give myself. But I also needed a place to land where I could feel safe. And
Hmm.
but so that's why I teach like that
Yeah.
to remind people that we can get lazy as humans. We can be lazy. Look, no one wants to do the hard things. It's not like we don't go in, yeah, today I'm going to go after that fucking monster. I'm going to go nail that pain.
Yeah.
Nobody goes in like that. But when we do the hard stuff and when we see that underneath it is magic and beauty and light and peace and truth and us again, that's what makes it worth it. So for me, I know sometimes I got to kick people's asses to go do that. But then I want to remind them that I'm right here. I got you. And you got you. By the way, you got you.
Well,
You
that I
can
think is
heal you.
huge. When people
And
start to
that's,
realize, like you did, like when you woke up and
yeah,
you're like, okay, Rebecca, get your
yeah,
shit together. We're starting today. You had
yes,
you.
it had me. And
And
I never want people to think, and when they do put me on a pedestal, they go, you changed my life. You fixed me. You healed me. No, 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 I did not. You healed you. I just showed up and I said, hey, I got this really cool tool. You want to try
yeah,
it?
I got some
And then,
pointers for you.
yeah, and then they grab it and then they do the work. But they fix them.
I agree. And it's the coolest
Yeah,
thing to watch it when people
yeah,
finally start to realize the power they have over
that's
their
right.
own selves. And look, and we all lose it sometimes. Like you were saying, you're in it.
Hmm.
Like I love when I say, well, I'm in it right now. Like, and I can
Yeah,
be so honest about it. Like, I'm in it
that's
right
right.
now. I'm
That's right.
exhausted. I'm not my best
Yes.
self. And
Yeah,
it's like, but it's an important awareness to have too.
right. So it takes two people connecting heart to heart, spirit to spirit, and the lights come back on, right? Even if we're having a hard moment. And that's what breath does. I think it's like giving ourselves that deep connection.
Yeah. I
Breath
think when
does
we can
that.
figure out how to give it to ourselves is key.
That's the magic. Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
amazing. I want people to also
Mm.
know there is a teacher training 3 Sundays in a row starting
Yes.
November. What was the date again?
5th, November
November
5th.
5th.
Yep.
So go if you want to learn breath work. First of all, you
Yeah.
don't have to have any desire to teach it
Right.
ever. If you just
Truly.
want to have a deeper dive in attaining this beautiful beautiful modality that I always find when you do trainings like this, you take these modalities, it just becomes so part of who you are and you don't ever have to teach it. Now, if you want to teach it, Rebecca's a great teacher to also teach you that too. But I always feel when people hear teacher training, they feel like, oh, I don't necessarily want to teach it. It's like, no,
Right.
but you want to
Yeah.
have it as more part of your life.
Yep.
This is like the most effective way to do that.
Yeah.
And so
I
it's
think
3 Sundays.
50%. Yeah, I think 50% of the people always come and go, I don't want to teach it. Sometimes at the end, though, they go,
I want to teach
I
it.
don't want to teach. Yeah. So come however you are. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a prereq. How many hours is it on Sundays?
It's 10 to 4.
Okay,
So
great.
6 hours for 3 Sundays. So 6, 12, 18 hours.
I mean, that is
And you get
guaranteed
with the
huge
base.
transformation, by the
Yeah.
way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank
Rebecca
you.
is amazing. Like I said, she is one of the most powerful teachers. So don't miss this opportunity to work with her, but also what a powerful person you are to just share your story like that. I mean, even from us just starting with just relationship advice in the beginning, I mean, that's such important information for all of us every single day. And I appreciate you. And I'm glad you kicked yourself in the ass and are here doing what you're doing because it's amazing and huge. And what a beautiful story to remind people, like, it doesn't matter what you go through, like life can be beautiful.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Since we first connected, I've always been so grateful for you in my life because you gave me my start, actually. You let me teach at the beautiful studio that I will always remember. And it has such a beautiful, sweet spot in my heart. I appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you.